Well, right now we're going to be joined by Sarat Mohanty, the head Global Supply Chain Finance Implementation Transaction Banking Standard Chartered Bank. Well, Sarat is the head of the Global Trade and Supply Chain Finance Client Implementation Transaction based in banking based in Singapore, where he's responsible for global client delivery for all trade and supply chain finance digital solution. Well, right now he's just going to be joining us live on the stage and screen. So I'd now request Sarat Mohanty to kindly join us on the stage and screen. Thank you so much, Mr. Mohanty, for joining us on the World Cloud Show. Now, as per time, we're going to be passing it on to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bhavna. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever the participants are. Let me try to project my slides. So can you see the slides now, Bhavna?
Yes, Mr. Mohanty, we can see.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, it's quick. Thank you for an excellent introduction, Bhavna. Just to give a bit more character to my experience. While I run the global trade and supply chain finance client implementation, I think apart from many things that is involved in this role, I think what is relevant for this particular forum is that this particular role entails a large degree of system integration from the bank with our clients. And these clients range from global multinational to business banking to the small medium enterprise. So we have a complete breadth of client that we deal with part of this role. And for the last 1 decade, I've had the experience of dealing with thousands of clients in the different spectrum, different part of the geography to deal with and work and partner with them on the system integration. Now, a bit about this topic. While the cloud transformation is a very hot topic in every corporate, whether it is a global multinational or whether it is a small scale industry or there is a business banking client. When I look at in any discussion, whether in my organization, whether it is with my client organization or with my colleagues in the industry, I often hear about cloud, and predominantly the discussions are a focus or gravitate towards more around the whole infrastructure play and the agility in terms of how do we host your data center, how do you move from an on-premise to a cloud hosting and all those things. So when I look at from my experience, dealing with an application integration with my clients over the last decade, there's one area which is very close to my heart is around those whole application engineering. And while this is a starting phase of this topic, but there are not many discussions that you find in the public domain, which is around application engineering. Yeah. So I thought probably this would be an interesting topic to come and talk about and then share my thoughts with an audience in this forum for them to take back and start to think around, what they need to do when it comes to really transforming into the cloud, embracing the cloud, and why and how the application engineering would play a key role in that journey. So if I look at why it is important, why do application engineering, is key to our cloud transformation? As I said, cloud transformation is not only an infrastructure play. Now, what do I mean by that? It is not only your moving your data center, consolidating your data center from 20 to 1 or 2 in the cloud, and the huge emphasis on the cost benefit revolving around the infrastructure. It reminds me about a decade or maybe in a decade and a half before, when this whole client services architecture came in, and when this whole service architecture came in, where a lot of people client server computing came in, a lot of applications were deployed in a client server architecture where it was very hot and got very popular because of the a great UI front end. But very soon, it became a bottleneck for many corporate users, where and this whole processing or the response time between the front end to the back end, it slowed down because of the architecture and the nature. And then came the whole thin client architecture, which sort of addressed the bottleneck of the technology, to reduce the transmission gap between the front end and the back end. But if you really mine it underneath, what exactly happened? When the whole client server architecture was deployed, people did not think about the power of the functionality, the data model, the process that are underneath in the client server architecture, which slowed down a lot of computing response time to the end user until the thin client architecture came in. So cloud computing potential, in my view, can be really unleashed when the application is repurposed and built, keeping both business process and data reengineering in mind. Yes, moving a data center gives you a lot of cost optimization. There's no doubt about it. But after you've done your infrastructure play, you will be living and breathing about your application, which is the usage of any of those platform that runs on the infrastructure. So if you're really not looking at your business process and data to re-engineer, to repurpose, and when you build an application in the cloud computing environment, and you really don't unleash the potential the cloud computing offers. API, I think it's known to everyone. Machine learning, everybody knows about it. It's quite a hot topic. Internet of Things. These are great digital disruptive tools available to everyone today. However, when you design, when you try to use them, and if you do not look at from a core process and data point of view, and you need to really make it as integral part of your design thinking, only then you really build an application which is really fit for purpose for a cloud computing architecture. The last piece is around why it is important. I think obviously it is common to everyone know that this whole SaaS model gives a huge benefit and opportunity into the speed to market. Today, there are big, large corporate clients who can deploy their cloud computing platform application in probably less than 50% of the time that it is take for an on-premise in a model. So therefore, it gives a huge benefit in terms of deploying a platform in the computing in the cloud computing in about a much faster way. It's called speed to market. And obviously, this cost optimization is a great benefit that you can get out of this if you really focus on the application engineering. For example, you really don't need to build the whole entire Rolls Royce at one go. You can really build as you go, as you become more agile and you deploy into the cloud. And then if you really need to add another functionality to it, see, the whole time to deployment is become much faster. So therefore, there's a huge opportunity. And in my view, going forward, once you are done and dusted with your infrastructure play, the real upside of your cost optimization and your client experience would really truly come in how good your application is and how relevant your application in the cloud computing platform. I think those are some of the top of my mind and why it is really important to really think and put a lot of emphasis on the application engineering. So with that, let's look at what is needed. What do we need to do, to really put our finger into the application engineering area. So first, if you repurpose your business process and data model, keeping your API consumption and microservices in mind. Now, why do I say that? When obviously, if any corporate who has been running with the application system, let's say for the last few years, maybe 5 years, 10 years, that was designed based on a certain business process principle, and hence a particular data model was designed. But now, if we really need to embrace the cloud computing, if we just do a lift and drop of your application and then deploy it in a data center hosted in cloud, that really doesn't give you the benefit of your application. In my view, there are certain applications even probably may not behave the way they behave today on premise. So therefore, your starting point has to be the API consumption, the microservices in mind, and you really have to go back and revisit your business process and data model, and then you have to repurpose them. What and how exactly you could do that? You could probably look at a process block, try to decompose them. Yes, when you designed your existing application, probably at that point of time, you needed 10 different process blocks to make a logical process or a function to be delivered. And after that, you decided or you designed a particular data block or data model to really respond to that particular process block. Now, all you need to do basically now, given the flexibility that is available with an API, microservices, with the digital tools available, you really have to look at how I can make it my process more modular. How can I decompose? How can I have an independent service block that can facilitate the API consumption with my business partner? Yeah. The third point is around determine which process and data that you can really take it to the cloud. It is not necessarily that you need to take your entire process and data into the cloud. Maybe there are certain process may not even function the way it is intended to function, and they can remain in on-prem or in monolithic in a framework. And the last one is probably, in my view, the most important and close to my heart, is that you really have to look at what your business partners are doing in the cloud space. If you have customers, you are integrating with your customers. If you're a supplier, you are integrating with your suppliers. And if you are not repurposing your application and you are not in sync, and if your application is not aligned with your business partner, and you will be probably in a disadvantaged position for various reasons. So it's absolutely critical to stick out your neck and look at into the external environment, especially for their business partner, what exactly they do and how can you be part of their ecosystem on the cloud. So then it's really unleashing your proposition and appreciated by your business partner. Let's look at a classical use case. I've taken a very simple use case, RFP, which is a request for proposal. I think every single organization at some point of time would have dealt with an RFP process. Obviously, when you kick off an RFP process, and obviously it has been supported by various different systems within your organization, a typical RFP will have a product or service requirement, what exactly you're looking for from your vendors. Obviously, what are the commercials, what are the price that involved in that RFP process, and what are the key milestone delivery timeline for that particular product services to be delivered to you. And then the service level, post delivery, what are your service level in terms of an ongoing support and services. Then comes your legal and compliance. Obviously, when you are asking for a product, there is a view from the legal and compliance, how does that fit into the framework. If you're in a banking or in a regulated environment like airlines, healthcare, these things play a bigger role into it. And then, of course, your technology solution, security architecture, and all those things. This is not the comprehensive list, but this is some of the areas that typically gets involved in a RFP process. Now, today, if I look at, most organizations would probably have to wait for everything to complete. Only then an RFP document can be released to your supplier, to your partners who are you looking for that service. Yes, there was a good reason why this whole thing have to be combined together before you can have a consolidated, completed RFP process document, and then before it is get released to your business partners. So if you look at a cloud computing architecture, if a view of what it could look at, for example, if I look at commercials is basically your prices or your cost that you're asking for your supplier based on the product and services requirement. It probably has nothing to do with the legal and compliance, for example, or may not be to do with the service level. So therefore, you could probably think of to decompose that commercial into part of your fat big RFP process, and then you could probably run for an API cost or a price API, a commercial API that your vendor can probably provide to you, and you can consume it. And you don't really need to wait for your legal and compliance, technology, solution architecture, everything to come together before an RFP process is done. As soon as you know what product services that you need, you can ask for the commercials. Same if you look at your key milestones, delivery timeline, you could think of a smart contract in a blockchain framework. It's a bilateral. It's unstructured. So you could probably share your key milestone delivery timeline details, same as your service levels, what's your turnaround time. These are all can be deployed thinking a smart contract in mind. And if you think that part of your design principle, and then you can really bring them as design it as a smart contract. So when you deploy your new RFP process into cloud, you can decompose them and then have a separate service. So as your technology solution and architecture, it can be digital library API. If you're looking for a particular security protocol that you are compliant with your organization, and when your service provider provides an API response, so you could probably consume that and then tick the box, look, this can be done. So this is in a nutshell, in a very simplistic view of a use case. And when you really start to do your application, repurpose them, or you want to build, keeping cloud in mind, I think it is absolutely critical that in my view, you literally need to throw out your existing system process data model and completely rethink, given the industry where it is, what are the different digital tools that are available, how I can consume API separately. Once you know exactly what are the level playing field available in the cloud, then you can go back to your whiteboarding session to define your business process and the data model that are completely in line with those APIs or a smart contract, kind of a scenario. So I think I will probably take a pause here, and then happy to take any questions from the audience.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sarat, for joining us and giving us your valuable time today. So there aren't any audience questions yet, Mr. Mohanty, but if you'd like to give any concluding remarks, we'd like you to do so.
Yeah, I think, as I said in the beginning, most people who are in the space of application development, application architecture, or in the technology field who are responsible for their applications, I think it is absolutely key to really look at and be very authentic to the approach that you take. If I'm really building a application in the cloud platform, and how do I get really the power of the cloud computing and then bring it into my application engineering. And then once I've done that, deployed that, and then you can probably look at it in a mirror and still look, what? This is an application that was built 10 years back, and it was great at that point of time. But you know what? I don't think that is really great in today's time. And I really need to recalibrate my thinking, remove my the 10 years back design thinking hat, put a digital or a cloud computing hat, and then go back into the each business process that application is constituted of, and the data model, and work with your application architecture, work with your infrastructure architecture, work with your data architect, and then try to convince them, what should be the business processes, what should be the application that you really want to deploy, and that can really benefit your organization and your application, so that at least when your competitors or your peers are operating in a cloud environment with all the options, wheels and vessels of IoT, the machine language, IoTs, and the cyber security, then if you would have really thought it through at time of your application engineering, I can tell you, you'd look a lot good in front of the world when you deploy that in the cloud environment.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Mohanty, and thank you for giving us your valuable time once again.